Hi, it's Danielle and Rob here from the BCO podcast, and we are back again with another episode. And this week we have a very explosive episode, right, Rob? Did you like that one?
Very, very exciting and animated. I like it. That's
That just
exactly my
came to
personality
me.
type as well. Yeah.
I wasn't even planning on doing it that way. That just came to me. Anyway, we have some interesting space news that we came across. And so we just are going to jump right into that as the podcast topic of the day, which is, Rob, go ahead, take it away.
We actually touched on this in an earlier episode. It's the upcoming nova that's expected later this year. It's T Coronae Borealis. But we're seeing more and more news about it as the days and weeks go by because the likelihood of this thing going nova is increasing. The most likely scenario is that it's going to blow sometime between now and September, but there's a 95% probability then that it will, definitely explode by the end of the year. And the reason we know this is because it's a recurrent nova. So it goes off like every 80 years or so. I think the last time was in 1946. And why this is exciting is because there is this change in the night sky that, and it's naked eye visible. So a star is going to appear to our naked eye that wasn't there before, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and from what I was reading, it's going to be about as visible as the as Polaris. Is that what you saw too? Which is pretty good because a lot of times, so this is a misconception I get a lot is that people think that Polaris being the North Star, they think that that is actually the brightest star in the night sky, but it's not. It's not the brightest thing to see in the night sky, but it's also not the dimmest. It is a decently bright star. So this is a really exciting explosion or phenomena, I guess you could say, that it's going to be bright enough to be able to see it. And like you said, no sort of equipment necessary. You'll be able to see it with the naked eye. So that's really exciting. I've never seen one myself, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I mean it just to help put the idea of how bright it will be in context, it's there's a mag system. Danielle, you could probably list that a bit better, but it goes from like 1 to, is it 12 is the kind of the usual end of the scale, with
Yeah,
one being the brightest.
yeah, exactly. So the lower the number, the brighter the object is in the night sky, and the higher the number, the dimmer it is. So that gives you, it's a really good scale if you're trying to figure out how many stars you can see in the night sky or objects, because sometimes you have nebula that are visible or galaxies that are visible with the naked eye. And so that gives you an idea. For example, when we are looking at objects in the night sky from the observatory, we know we have a certain magnitude we have to stay within. And so sometimes we'll have something like this come up. First thing we do is, what magnitude is it? Are we going to be able to even see it? So knowing that scale and kind of having a rough idea of what you can spot from your area makes stargazing a little bit easier. So it's a nice, easy scale to kind of get familiar with if you want to start looking at the night sky and getting familiar with the objects. Get familiar with your magnitudes and what kind of magnitude is. I'm thinking because I'm thinking of a different scale now. Move on, because I'm gonna go too deep into what you can see with telescopes. So yeah, get used to what objects. Oh, I was thinking the Messier objects. Also, if you have the table of Messier objects, it'll have your magnitudes on there usually. So that's kind of a good one to start off with, and you kind of get to know what's visible with the naked eye. And this will be do you know what it was? What magnitude it's going to be visible at?
I was going to say it's between magnitude 2 and 3 they're anticipating. So I think Sirius, the dog star, is magnitude 1 as a reference. So it's really very, very close to one of the brighter objects in the sky.
Which, sorry to interrupt, but that is when you talk about the brightest object in the night, the brightest star in the night sky. Sirius is it. It's not the North Star. It is Sirius. So that does give you a good idea of how bright that object is really going to be. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, I could never remember if it was like an inverse scale where 12 meant bigger and brighter. So what I do know is from reading today that the average young person's eyes can discern up to about mag 6 with the naked eye. So this will, regardless of whether it turns out to be a 2 or a 3, this will definitely be visible with the naked eye. But for those who heard Danielle describe Messier objects there but might not be familiar with them, Danielle, can you offer a quick refresher on what Messier was doing when he made his big old chart? Why was he tracking all these objects?
Yeah, so Messier was a French astronomer, and he was looking for comets in the night sky. Actually, I think because we were talking about Halley's Comet just before that. And I think, I actually think it was Halley's Comet that he was tracking when he found a lot of his objects. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, he was looking at comets in the night sky. And so when he was using his telescope, he was coming across these patchy spots in space. So they were really just cloudy patches. And they weren't stars and they weren't comets. So he started making notes of what he was spotting in the night sky and their locations because he could go back to them. And a lot of his objects now are called nebula. So when he was writing them down as nebula, because that's the Latin word for cloud or mist. And so he was labeling this nebula, this nebula, this nebula. And then as technology has gotten better, as telescopes have gotten better, cameras have gotten better, we've realized that some of those objects are not actually nebula. Some of them are. They are nebula, but some of them are galaxies, and a lot of them are star clusters, which are I find really cool. They're just a really I love anything that sparkles. I'm basically a magpie, so like anything with a lot of sparkly stars in the center of it, obsessed. So his chart, his list of objects in the night sky is a really fun one because he didn't have super incredible, expensive equipment that he was using to track down these objects. So it's a really good one to start with when you're just starting out in astronomy, is to try to do as many Messier objects as you can. And yeah, so it's a good reference point.
So the dude was basically trying to keep a catalog of stuff that wasn't comets because he was getting frustrated with all the stuff. It was like, ooh, that looks a bit like a comet. Ooh, that looks a bit like a comet.
Yeah, well, it was more like, here, I'm looking for a comet. What the heck is this thing in the way? Well, that's not what I wanted, but I'll keep track of that. So yeah.
I feel his pain as a guy who likes foraging for mushrooms. I once thought I was after stumbling upon like the mother load of mushrooms. I just saw all these white little buttons in a field, and I got so excited and rushed towards it, and realized I was after stumbling across a driving range.
You're joking.
I understand his pain. Anyway, moving
I
on from that
don't
moment
know.
of idiocy.
I genuinely don't even know what to say about that. Like, I can't even say that's, oh, sorry, Rob. It's just like, what? There were no other signs? There were no other markers? Or just like, oh, golf balls.
Wasn't paying enough attention. But anyway, back to the object at hand. Was so for those who are not sure what a nova is, what's actually happening here is there is two stars, so a binary system, and one of them is a white dwarf. So imagine a star that's about the size of planet Earth, but it's got all the mass of our sun. So it's like really, dense, and it's got a lot of gravity. It's actually pulling fuel from a nearby red giant. And all that happens is that over time and at a predictable rate, every 80 years, it accumulates enough fuel that it triggers a fusion reaction and it blows it all off in this bright explosion. And that is what we're going to be able to see. We're going to be able to see this sudden appearance of a star that wasn't there before. It was there before, but you couldn't see it with the naked eye. And it's going to be visible for probably 2 to 3 days. And some articles I've read have suggested up to a week. So what we want to do over the course of this episode is basically help you identify where that star is going to appear so that you can look out for it in the night sky, and we can notify you when the news breaks that the nova is after happening, and you can go outside and hopefully you'll spot the new star.
I think that is so exciting for people who are really familiar with their stars and they're really familiar with their night sky to then look up and see something that is actually, I'm equating it to my first time going to the southern hemisphere and seeing the moon and coming out and looking at a full moon and going, oh my gosh, the moon is upside down. And my friend with me going, what do you mean the moon is upside down? Because we were in Australia. I was like, it's different at home. It's definitely the other way around. So it's one of those things when you get really used to seeing a certain object in the sky and then all of a sudden it's just different. You're like, what? It's very strange. So I'm excited to actually be able to see something new. Do you know what'll happen though? Do you know what'll happen when we have this explosion go?
But
yeah, exactly. It'll be storms coming through. We'll have rain for 2 weeks. It'll just be beautiful weather and cloudy for no reason, because that's what happens with any sort of astronomical event. That's the curse. But we're hoping that's not actually what's going to happen. So do you want to give some tips and tricks on how to find this and what part of the sky to look for?
So this is obviously an audio platform, so it's not the easiest to point stuff out to you in the night sky, but I'm going to try to describe it using really common constellations. And for those who can't follow along, don't worry. I'm going to record a short little video and Danielle will post that in the show notes, so you'll be able to watch that if you're not able to keep up.
And for anyone that's of this generation and not from 2 millennia ago, when he means show notes, he means the comment section down below. Right, Rob?
I don't know why I agree to do this every week. So for those of you who are familiar with the plow, it looks a lot like a question mark or a saucepan in the night sky. So what you're going to want to do is assume it is a question mark and work your way down from the top of that question mark. So where the loop suddenly becomes straight, it's going to point down towards the southwest. As you travel through the sky ever so slightly, you'll come across this other constellation that looks a bit like a cross between a pentagon and a diamond. If you saw a pentagram in the sky, that'd be scary.
Like slightly different shapes here. I was like, I've never seen the pentagram in the night sky, but okay, we'll go with it.
It's like an elongated pentagon. And that's the constellation Bootes. And at the bottom of it, like the sharp point at the bottom, there's a really bright star called Arcturus. So that can be a really helpful way to help you make sure that you found the correct little constellation. And just to the left of that, like at the left corner of that diamond, you'll see the horseshoe-shaped constellation. And that's the Corona Borealis, or the Northern Crown. And it's in that constellation that we're going to see this new star appear. All of the instructions I gave are relevant for about 11 or 12 o'clock at night over the next 2 to 3 months, because it's just, you're not going to see it any earlier than that. It's too bright still. And if you look at any other time, the southwest to west orientation I described might not, remain accurate. So I would encourage you to check out that video that we're going to post. It's going to make it a bit more clear. But if nothing else, you're going to have learned a couple of new constellations, hopefully. And fingers crossed, then in the coming weeks, we'll be able to tell you about a new star showing up in one of them.
And the North Sky is actually a good place to get familiar with the constellations as well, because a lot of them are visible throughout the year, like the plow. And for anybody else who is listening, not from Ireland, in other places it's called the Big Dipper or the wagon, or sometimes called the saucepan as well. That's the same one we're talking about. So this is actually, it's the plow is actually not a constellation. It's actually an asterism, which is a collection of familiar stars or very bright stars within a constellation. And so sometimes people, when I'm talking to people during a planetarium show, they don't know the plow or the saucepan. They actually know Ursa Major, and a lot of times they're Latin speaking. They're coming from Latin speaking countries, so countries that have languages that are Latin based. That's what I'm trying to say. So like French and Spanish and things like that. They're familiar with Ursa Major. So that's the big bear in the sky. So the plow is actually the tail end of the big bear. And what's great about there's a lot of things that are really useful with the plow, but it is circumpolar. So it stays around around Polaris. So it never really sets here. So you're able to spot it throughout the year, which is really good. So it's a good place. If you're trying to get used to the night sky, it's a good place to start, because you're able to have more time with it, I guess, throughout the year. So that's exciting. I can't wait for this.
Once in a lifetime opportunity. Well, unless you live for 100 years, and then it's a twice in a lifetime opportunity.
I was going to say, I'm definitely going to see this again. There's no way I'll make it. Yeah. I've got people in the family over 100. Well, they're gone now, but in the past have had people in the family over 100.
Speaking of lifetime, once in a lifetime events, are there ones that you've seen that are supposedly once in a lifetime?
I've seen I've seen a comet, and it was Hale-Bopp, which I'm trying to remember how old I think I was about maybe 10. And I know I took a picture with it. I had a camera that I think I found somewhere. I think I was in Niagara Falls, and it was just there which, yeah, I didn't try to find my own, the owner. I was just like, this is mine now.
Found.
Yeah. And I kind of remember, I mean, I was a kid.
The
But I kind of
second week on the BCO Crime Podcast. Last week we were showing you how to hide bodies. This week we're showing you how to steal and get into astrophotography using other people's cameras.
Like, I know I look extremely young, but I've lived a life. Let me tell you, I've got a lot of tips and tricks. Yeah. So anyways, I had this stolen camera, and I remember taking a picture of it. So technically it would have been my first astrophotography shot as well. I'd love to find it. I know I've got it floating around somewhere at home. But it was really exciting because did you happen to get a chance to see that at all? Do you remember that? I know we would have been young.
Vague memory of my grandfather pointing out a comet to me in the night sky, but I was really young. I don't recall my grandfather being an expert in astronomy, so he could have been pointing out the wrong thing. But I think I do have a recollection of seeing some kind of like fuzzy object in the night sky.
It was
Whether it was Hale-Bopp or not, I'm not sure.
It was one of those where you didn't have to be an expert, because I remember it very clearly. It was very, very bright in the sky, and you could see the tail and everything. Like as a kid, I remember going out and being able to see it at night and for days. So I remember it getting brighter and then fading away. And then we had NeoEyes that came around a couple summers ago, and I did get a little bit of that, and I took a really terrible picture on my phone one night. But I remember Hale-Bopp being a lot brighter than the NeoEyes. So I really like comets because you don't see them very often. So it is really exciting. You don't see ones that are naked eye visible very often at all. So those are a lot of fun. I've never seen a solar eclipse, so that's one thing I would love to do. And I think that's it. I think that's the only real. Have you seen any once in a lifetime astronomical events?
Well, not once in a lifetime, but unlikely we'll see another one as good. The Aurora Borealis earlier in the summer. I doubt we'll get one as good as that again in my lifetime. And that was pure luck.
And I love that you keep bringing it up, knowing that I missed it. And I think that this is never going to end, that I'm just going to keep hearing about how amazing it was to see these Northern Lights from Cork. Oh my God.
What was nice about that one is checking out social media. Social media these days, as we all know, has kind of gone a little bit strange compared to what we might have been used to. But it used to be that if you wanted to see what everybody was saying about, let's say, the football, you had to search the hashtag for the football. But on the night of the Aurora Borealis, you didn't have to do that refinement. All anybody was talking about across the Northern Hemisphere was the Aurora. Like there was no like refining your search or anything. Every single picture after the next picture after the next picture was everybody going, oh my God, I can see the Aurora. So that was kind of cool to be part of that kind of cultural thing.
No, it was awful. I went away from social media, and then on top of it, got bombarded with just messages from friends and family from all different countries sending me on their lovely photographs. So there was no escaping it. So I'm a little bit bitter.
The one I'm more proud of, though, is the transit of Mercury, because that took effort. So for people who don't know, we actually have a solar scope at work called a Coronado, I think.
Yep.
It's got a special filter on it that makes it safe to look at the sun using this particular telescope. It is never safe to look at the sun with any other telescope. You just don't do it. I warned you. If you burn your eyeballs out, not on me.
And if you ever want to see something really disgusting, you can Google what it looks like when someone looks through a telescope at the sun that's not a protected telescope or with protective filters. Oh, if you're squeamish, I do not recommend that Google search.
No, I'm never ever looking that up. Why would you Google? I've seen you
I didn't Google
have drawn cartoon pictures of bones breaking and Danielle has retched.
I can't.
And you'll Google an eyeball melting.
See, if it's a bone, no. On other stuff, I don't really mind. But I didn't Google it. I was in an astronomy course, and the lecturer actually put a photograph up. And so it was a real eye-opener of why you don't point the telescope at the sun. So even when we were the first time I ever used a Coronado, I was not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous. It's a little bit terrifying to think you're looking straight at the sun. But it's a really cool telescope and incredibly expensive for I wouldn't start off that way. Let's just go with that. But it is a lot of fun to, well, Also, the irony of having a solar scope in Ireland. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about the Irish weather. It's been a real rainy summer, but yeah, it is really cool that we do have a Coronado at work.
Yeah, and we do opportunistically bring it out for the general public. So if you are ever in the area, it's worth swinging by to see if we happen to be using it out in the courtyard, because it is fun to check out the sun, even when there isn't like a transit of Mercury. You can see like sunspots or a little bit of like a mass ejection. Um, those are really cool too. And when I first saw those, I was really excited. But what I liked about the transit of Mercury was it was really tricky. Like I remember I was in a room full of astronomers who were struggling, and like we all get on really well, but there is a little bit of like a competitive spirit in the lab. And I never win anything because I'm the zoologist. So like, Alan, Danielle, Circa, and all, people who've worked with us over the years have this expertise that I don't have. So they're all like, oh yeah, I got this amazing image last night of like a black hole, or I got this amazing image. The transit of Mercury is to this day the only thing that I got to view before the other guys. And I think it's just because of how much time I spent looking at microscopes during my zoology degree, at like these teeny, teeny, tiny little insects under the scope. So getting that tiny little dot on the sun was a really, really tricky experience, and it was really rewarding when we got it. And it was like fun. Like everybody in the office just kept going around and having a look at this cool little thing. Because it's like once every 70 years or something, I think, you can actually see this transit of Mercury.
I'm just going to say, you tell this story all the time. I don't remember it going that way, but I'm just going to let you have it.
It's one of the nicer stories I have, but there's others that I'm not telling.
Because I do have
Involving
pictures
two
of,
astrophysicists setting up my telescope for the first time. I'm going to skip over that one and save that for a future date.
and I won't tell the story of you putting up the planets in the wrong order. Even like an 8-year-old could do that. But anyway, the transit of Mercury, even that day, was tough because it was real patchy cloud. So I've got photographs it's just my phone actually. I attached the phone to the Coronado and got a few snaps of Mercury. But it is really tough to see because there's a lot of cloud going through. And that was cool. Mercury is a tough one to see. So we do consider it a naked eye planet, and you can see it without a telescope. Not transiting the sun. That's not something you're going to be able to do with your eye. But it orbits so closely to the sun that the only time you can really see it is either at sunset when it's on, I was going to say like the left side of the sun, but it's as the sun is setting, Mercury will set after it. Or when Mercury is on the other side of the sun and then it's coming up at sunrise, you'll see Mercury first before sunrise. So you get really limited time with Mercury because it doesn't get too far away from the sun. So by the time the sun comes up, and it's so small, that's the other part of it. It's so little. So it's not super, super bright in the sky. And so if you see it at sunrise, you get a little bit of time before the sun comes up. And then once the sun is up, you can't see Mercury anymore. So I've gotten to see it a few times. That year, I saw it in Zurich as well. And they have a really cool observatory, kind of similar to ours. In the way that it's in the middle of the city, and it's an older observatory. So we're not an old observatory, but we're on an old structure. They have this 100. Well, when I was there, that was a few years back now, but the telescope inside was 112 years old. This giant refractor they have in there, and it's all mechanical. So that was really cool because the guy operating it, it was not like ours. All of our equipment and everything, including the telescope mount, is all done through software, and it's all connected through a laptop. And he was there with all gears and just like moving everything around and moving this giant telescope around the observatory. I thought it was so impressive. And then pinpointing things like Mercury. So I just was so impressed with him. So I got to see it through the telescope, which was cool. And then once he was kind of there were these steps to go up to be able to look into the telescope. So he had to go one by one. So after I saw it through the telescope, he was letting other people go. So we had a bit more time before he moved to the next object. So I went out onto the balcony and I looked out and I could see it with my eye. So I thought that was really cool. So I got to see it both ways. And then from a plane just recently. Actually, it might have been in the winter. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, I was coming back from the US and I saw Mercury at sunrise. So just before the sun came up. So it is a little, I don't want to say that's once in a lifetime, but it is a tricky one to spot. So I'll say that's a cool object to see in the night sky, or morning sky. One of the objects that I really enjoy looking at through the telescope is the Crab Nebula. And it is a beautiful, you know what the Crab Nebula looks like. We've got images. And even in the observatory, if you come and visit the Science Center and you come into the exhibit, you'll see a huge wall with the Crab Nebula on it. And that was a choice. I don't know if it was me specifically or if you had mentioned, I know you had mentioned, let's put in a nice astro image. And I think I was just like, Crab Nebula, let's go. So we've got a whole 8 foot by 8 foot wall of this Crab Nebula. And it's just a really beautiful object in the sky. If I remember right, it's about 6,500 light years, so about 6,500 light years away from Earth. So relatively close, next door neighbor practically. And it's this beautiful rainbow kind of color. And what I love about it is that what you're looking at, this beautiful object, is actually the death of a star. So this was a supernova explosion, and it was visible during the daytime, even with the naked eye. And this was observed by Chinese and Japanese astronomers 1,000 years ago, and they recorded this. And it is kind of cool. I think when you're doing astronomy like this, there's this sort of connection to what astronomers were doing in the past as well. So they're recording this explosion happening so bright that it was seen during the daytime. And now 1,000 years later, nearly 1,000 years later, we can take our telescopes and look at the exact same object, and it looks different. It's not an explosion. It's not a bright white explosion anymore, because the explosion was only visible for a few days, or I think maybe possibly up to a week with the naked eye. But now we can see the remnants of the explosion, and that's what the Crab Nebula was, or still is. You can still see it. So you have all the layers of the different elements from coming out from the star as it exploded, and then in the center you can actually see what's left over of this dying star. And this one in particular, one of the reasons I chose it for the images in the exhibit is it has an Irish connection. So William Parsons of Parsonstown, he loved the night sky as well and built a massive telescope up in Birr in County Offaly, and it was the largest telescope in the world for 70 years. It's huge. You and I have both seen it, gone up for a visit. I was blown away the first time I saw. Do you remember what it was like when you first saw this?
Oh, it's so cool. Like it's kind of hard to get your head around. Like it doesn't almost look like a telescope. It just looks like a giant cannon because it's got these huge concrete walls on either side of it for like lifting it up and down. So it has a pretty narrow field that it can move through because it's that big. But it's just an incredible structure. I'd highly recommend anybody pop up to Burcastle to check it out.
And I can't remember exactly the size of the mirrors. I think it was 2 meters, about 6 feet or so.
Yeah, pretty close to 6 feet. I remember somebody telling me that your average guy could walk down the barrel of the scope, basically.
Right. Yeah. So it's a huge, essentially like a gigantic Newtonian reflector. It's a huge, huge mirror at the back of it. Huge tube. That's what Rob's talking about. They had the walls to lift the tube up and down to be able to navigate through the night sky. And from what I've read, I think they had 2 mirrors. And because what they would do is they would grind down and polish the mirrors. And then once it would start to tarnish, they would take one out, put the other one in, and then polish up the other one and get it ready. So they were constantly swapping the mirrors in and out. But William Parsons actually observed the Crab Nebula, and at that time would have been more of that kind of ring shape. And then when he was doing anything in the night sky with this amazing Leviathan telescope, he didn't have a camera like we have today. So he was keeping sketches and sketching down his objects that he was seeing. And when he sketched the supernova explosion, the remnants of the explosion, his sketch looks like a crab. So they actually have images. They still have his drawings and things up at Birr, and you can see the black and white sketch that he had, and it does. It kind of looks like a crab. So this is why we call it a Crab Nebula, because if you look at it today through a telescope, you're like, where's the crab? There's no crab here at all. It just looks like an oval. But yeah, he essentially gave the Crab Nebula its name, and that's the one that's used around the world. So I love that kind of Irish connection there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So this will be different. This explosion won't leave that sort of remnant in the night sky with the rainbow ring around it. But it'll still be a lot of fun to see nonetheless, because I've never seen any sort of explosion with the naked eye. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, Betelgeuse teased us a few years back and made us think it was going to go supernova, which would have been a really cool once in a lifetime. Because again, it would have been visible during the day. It would have been so bright. But what actually happened, it dimmed, and they were anticipating that it would dim before it actually exploded. But what happened that tricked us was it basically threw off a load of mass. And as that gas got further away from the star, it cooled and created a cloud between us and the star that made it seem as if it was dimming from our perspective. So basically a space cloud got in the way and screwed us. So it doesn't look like Betelgeuse is going to explode in our lifetime, which is a shame. Well, it just would be cool to see. I don't wish anything, unfortunate upon good old Betelgeuse, but it would be cool to see.
This is my other, so there's my sort of, do I want this to happen or not want this to happen? Because it's the opposite with Betelgeuse. I am so used to seeing Orion, which I mentioned before is one of my favorite constellations, with his shoulder and having Betelgeuse there. And I just can't imagine what it'd be like. Sometimes I look at the constellation and go, what would it be like to not see that anymore? So that's when I was saying it'd be cool to see something that I'm not used to seeing. I don't know if I like that. I don't like change that much.
Yeah, it's a really trippy thought. I've often thought, because some constellations look nothing like what they're supposed to look like. And I'm like, did they used to when the stars exploded or something? But it is, like you said, change would be a bit of a bummer for something so iconic in the sky, but still to see it for a few days during the day, so cool.
He actually looks like what he's supposed to. And that's exactly what I mean. When you look up there, he's going to be a whole shoulder missing. That's a problem. So that's something to keep an eye out for. And I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully it's between now and September, right? Or is it October?
Most likely. It could happen later in the year, but it's most likely to happen between now and September. So this could be everybody getting to tick a once in a lifetime box in terms of astronomy if you're just starting out your astronomy hobby. Or if you're somebody who's a bit more experienced, we'd love to hear what your once in a lifetime thing. I know some of our friends in Cork Astronomy Club got to see the total eclipse in the United States, for instance. So, if you've seen a once in a lifetime thing like that, please tell us. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah,
or tell us what your wish list is.
Yeah. That'd be really good. Let us know what you're interested in seeing and where you got to see it. Did you get to see it here in Ireland, or did you have to travel for it? I'm really interested to know. All right. Well, I'm excited for this. I am hoping that it happens around Space Week. That would be great, wouldn't it? So
we'll have lined it up on purpose. We'll make it seem like best national coordinators ever.
100%.
We've arranged a nova for you.
We said it in the podcast months ago. We knew it was going to happen. Space Week, October 4th to the 10th. Check us out during that time. All right, so we'll head out of here. Thanks for chatting about that, Rob. And we will. Any other parting words or advice or anything you'd like to give before I shut this down?
No, thanks for putting me on the spot. My brain was switched off. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a cup of tea now and refresh my brain.
Yeah. Well, make sure you check us out on all social media platforms and reach out if you have any questions, general space questions as well. We love those. And we will talk to you next time. See ya.